I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. I'm glad to be here. That means that my eye's healing. Everything's doing just exactly like it's supposed to. I saw the doctor Wednesday this week, and he said, this looks pretty good. He said, you're seeing 20/30 in that eye. He didn't expect me to be able to see that well. I had to do the standard letters on the line, you know. He said, we may get you, back when he talked about giving me the surgery, I think he was being cautious and not raising my hopes too high. But he said, you might get 3 to 4 lines. In other words, I would be able to see better than what I could before. Because when I first started, when I walked in there and it said I wanted to have the surgery, if I looked at that eye chart with just my right eye, I saw nothing. I saw blurs. Couldn't have read a letter on it. Didn't matter. Right now, with my right eye, I can read that that's a jet drill press, that's a Canon camera, that's a DeWalt saw. I can see that that is number 36. It's amazing. I can see it all. If I hold it up and have my glasses in the picture on a reading lens, it's dry film lubricant, displaces moisture, prevents corrosion, resists oil and dirt buildup. That's amazing. You got to remember, I'm a machinist and a tool maker, and I do precision work. I like doing precision work. Everybody has a dominant eye. My right eye is my dominant eye. So trying to see a pair of calipers or a micrometer barrel when I couldn't read a number pretty much was done. I was going to have to learn how to do everything with my left eye. I also like to shoot, and I'm right-handed. So aiming is a matter of looking through my right eye down the barrel. Now, I shoot with both eyes open. I sight the barrel in, and I keep my left eye open so that I can detect what's going on around me and see things in the peripheral. I was a pretty good shot. Right now I'm not. Right now I haven't tried shooting a rifle, and I probably won't for a while. Quite a while, because I don't want to have any large jars. You know, I want to have everything have a chance to heal up. But with this eye screwed up like it was, everything looking like a Salvador Dali painting, I couldn't tell what I was aiming at. So, very happy that this is working as well as it is. I think that I'll be able to do everything that I wanted to do, everything I could do before, perhaps not with the same amount of ease, but I'll be able to do everything that I could before. The other thing was welding. To weld, I needed to have depth perception. I needed to be able to put a stinger, or the welding rod, or a stinger is a MIG welder. Put the tip of the MIG welder and the tip of the wire on the point where I wanted to weld and track a seam. I couldn't do that. I tried welding something for my son, and I couldn't lay a bead for nothing. I was missing the seam entirely, couldn't find it. And that was with an electronic helmet, so that I could actually see the seam. But when I started the weld, I was off to one side or the other, anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1 inch. Just couldn't tell where the stinger was, because my depth perception was off, and the angularity was off. I would see the stinger, because you're not looking straight down the wire, you're looking off to the side. And I would see it as being pointed at the thing I wanted to weld, but it was actually going either to the far side or to the near side. And once I struck the arc, I couldn't see the seam at all because of the bright light. And I couldn't track a straight line. I mean, I could pull a straight line, but I was pulling a straight line an inch away from the weld seam, or some variation of that, either far or near. So that was my first skill. That was the first thing that I was really good at. When I bought my first welder, I picked up the stinger and I started welding. And I was welding, bragging? Yes. Statement of fact, absolutely. I could weld a straight seam anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And the stinger was just an extension of me. When I wanted to weld something, I just welded it. I welded at the foundry. I welded at Home Builders Incorporated. I was the electrician at Home Builders Incorporated. And electrician's job is to run the wire to this modular section at one half of a building. And I would wire two halves of a building in one day. Mostly I would run the wire through, attach all the wires to the outlets, string the lights, hook up to the power panel, and be done in about 2 hours, because it was this small building. And it's only each building half was only 12 feet by 40. So that was pretty small. Also, there was no paneling in the way. I ran the wire to each one of the outlets from the outside of the building, where there's no sheathing. They hadn't put the siding on the building yet. And there was no roofing. So I could run the wire by just walking the rafters and flipping the wire underneath the rafters, dropping it into place, and then stapling it down. And it went really quick. So 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, I was pretty much caught up. And I had a friend there that worked there. Gosh, I can't remember his name. And he's a guy that I wanted to remember. It'll come to me. Anyways, he worked as the maintenance guy. In other words, he fixed the equipment and machines and everything, air hoses, that kind of stuff. He also doubled as a welder because they were short of welders. They'd hired a welder, and he was supposedly certified. One of the things that they did was they welded hitches onto the frame of the building so that it could be towed down the road. The first hitch he welded on, they took it over to the line, set it on the stands, and of course they flip it over when they do that, so the hitch is underneath the frame, and the hitch fell off. Just fell off. He was no longer the welder. He became a siding guy. So they were short a welder, and they were desperate to get a welder. And Gene Precker, that's the guy's name, Gene Precker. Great guy. Lots of fun. He said, well, Dave can weld, because I told him that what I had done in other jobs, you know. And so they said, okay, go get him and have him help you back here. So I went back and I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, well, we're welding this frame together, and we got to weld these outriggers on, and we got to put the hitch on. We got to assemble the hitch and put the hitch on. Actually, the hitches were already welded together. They just needed to be attached to the building. When they got to the place where they were going to drop the building off, they'd cut off the hitch and then bring it back. So I said, cool. What do you want me to do? Well, you cut some steel for us, and we'll do the welding. Because they'd never seen me weld before, and they already had one certified welder that was disappointing. So I got out the cutting torch, and I was cutting the steel, which that was something I did at the foundry all the time. I mean, I ran an oxy torch every day. Every day you were doing something. So I'm cutting the steel, and I said, okay, I'm all done. And I said, what do you want done next? It took about an hour to cut out enough material to make the frame of the building. And they said, well, weld on some outriggers for us. So I picked up the outrigger and I stuck it up against the frame of the building. I said, you want them on each one of these marks? Yeah. So I took the stinger, stuck it up against the outrigger, ran the bead down, and welded it. And they said, oh, you've got to weld it up. I said, why? Because it won't hold if you don't weld it up. I said, no, if you do a good job welding down, it'll stay. And they said, okay, well, let's try and break that off. They bent that outrigger 40 ways to Sunday and couldn't get it to come off. And I said, You just got to get the angle right and get the penetration right and weld with the stick in the vertical position so that it welds and builds the puddle on top of the stick, and then just juggle the puddle down the weld and you'll get penetration and it'll burn in, do just fine. I said, this outrigger is only 1/8 inch thick. I'm being careful not to burn through. So from then on, we welded outriggers vertical down. I went through and welded all the outriggers on, and during that time they'd welded the corners on the front. I welded the corners on the back. And they said, okay, why don't you weld the camber? What's the camber? Well, when they build a modular home, because the building is so long and they put the axle in the center, if you're going down the road and you go down a hill, and moderate hill, the tail end of the building will drag on the ground if you don't do something called camber. That's put a weld bead down the center of the I-beam, which causes it to curl up like a scorpion's tail. Not a whole lot, maybe 6 inches. You don't want to put a lot of weld on there, otherwise it makes the building impossible to build because you're trying to put a flat building on top of this. You're just making up for the tendency for the I-beam to bow under the load. So, picked up the stinger and I said, you got any bigger welding rod? And they said, yeah, we've got some heavy 3/16 stuff over there. I said, cool. Picked up the welder, cranked it up to 400 and went down the junior I-beam, walking along running that stinger, and put the bead in the I-beam. That's how you did it at the foundry. The idea was if you were down, if the foundry was down, say the sand elevator was down, you wanted to get it going as quick as you could because you had over 400 people standing around waiting for you to get the sand going so that they could make castings so that everybody could get paid. Cost a ton when the thing was down. So welding was important to get it done quick. Every job was important to get it done quick. So when you welded high amperage and put down as much rod as you could to make a good weld. You didn't want to do just stupid stuff, but you wanted to go as fast as you could. So that was my plan, was to go as fast as I could. Just like running a wire. I could have slugged it out like the guy prior to me, where he'd take all day to weld it, or he'd take all day to wire up half a house. I didn't have time for that. I wanted to get it done and go on to the next job. So, got all done, got that frame done, and the owner of the company came walking through the building. Wasn't a huge company, there was maybe 40 people working there, but we put out about a house and a half a day. And he came walking out and he looked at the weld and he said, "Who did that?" They pointed at me and he said, "Where'd you learn to weld?" I said, "I've been welding since I was 14, and I worked at the foundry for 3.5 years. I took a welding class at the Career Center," and I didn't tell him this, but the Career Center teacher said, "You've been helping everybody set up their welders. And tell you what, if you don't want to come back for class, I'll give you a C, you'll pass, you don't have to do anything. Because I can't teach you anything." I said, okay, fine. I didn't want to be there anymore. It was kind of boring. So I took the C and graduated from class, and away I went. I'm not a certified welder. I'm just really very good at it. In any case, he was very pleased with the weld, and I became one of the permanent welders. As a matter of fact, Gene Precker and I took over the welding, and the other guy went back to driving truck. Gene was doing the maintenance work, but I was helping him. So it didn't take long to get anything fixed, didn't take long to get anything welded. And the electrician went back to being happy. He was a nice young man. Different ways of looking at it, but I'm just going to go with that. And I didn't have to work with him, so I didn't care. Okay, that's been a long talk, and thanks for listening. I'm feeling good. I got a job done. I didn't wear myself out. No problems. I'm not seeing any floaters. I'm not having any worries about being out here in the shop. Everything is going just great. I'm feeling good. I got a job done. I didn't wear myself out. No problems. I'm not seeing any floaters. I'm not having any worries about being out here in the shop. Everything is going just great. So, thanks a lot for watching. If you have any suggestions for new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all.
This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union without the express written permission of the parents or the legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.